you are for me. It takes away my pain and it makes my body numb. Between two thieves, a head hanging low. Forgive them for they know not what they've done. Cavalry, take me in and shelter me. My immortal home, you'll be your cavalry, my home. Cavalry, open up your gates to me. You can have my body, but my soul flies free. Your cavalry, my home.
Good morning, beautiful people. The wheels do indeed keep turning on Babz, Rawls. You know it's around 9 o'clock. It's time for Lovebabz, Lovetalk. And this is a talking part today. I'll keep you all abreast of what's going on for the weekend tomorrow. Enru is on tomorrow. But this morning, I've got Monica Maccera Filppu, who is the new executive director of Common Ground High School.
Hi, Babz.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we were having a little bit of conversation before we got on the air. I thought she was coming from far and wide, but she's from here.
Yes, I am. Actually, I've been in New Haven longer than I've lived anywhere in my life. So at this
Really?
point, it's my hometown.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So tell me what, now you know Common Ground is a charter school.
I do.
And there's a lot of, Connecticut has a love-hate relationship with its charter schools.
Yeah.
You ready to jump into that fray?
Sure. Okay. Well, I've worked in education for a long time, Babz. I started as a classroom teacher in a dual language classroom in Washington, D.C. Almost 30 years ago.
Really?
I'm aging myself here. No, 25. 1995. I can't do math. I wasn't a math teacher, but I was a dual language teacher. Spanish is my native language.
Is it? Are you a Latina?
I am a Peruvian. Proud Peruvian. Yes, I am.
All right.
I moved to the United States as a child with my parents, and eventually we decided to stay and make our life here as a family. So so my mom was very it was very important to her that we be fully bilingual and be able to go back to Peru at any time and go to school. Or
That's interesting because so many of the stories that I hear from Latinos is that their parents wanted them to assimilate and so stop speaking Spanish.
Yep. Yeah. I think there's a lot of access and privilege issues around language that are really complicated. In my situation, we always planned to go back. So it was really important to my parents that I be able to sort of jump right back in and assimilate there.
Okay.
And also my mom was a fluent English speaker. And so I didn't play that translation role that a lot of children of immigrants play. And so she just was perfectly comfortable in English when she needed to be in English, but at home it was all Spanish all the time.
Okay.
Not allowed to speak English at all.
So she knew early on
the
privilege of language and how to use language to get through things. So now, do you feel like an immigrant?
I do, especially because we moved around a ton. When I was a child, my dad was a physician, and he had finished medical school in Peru. We moved here right after that, and then there was lots of years with different visas and different towns and different places as he sort of found his path professionally here,
Mm-hmm.
and there was just that always the language difference of what the language spoken in my home. And we lived in some Midwestern towns, Babz. We lived in Rochester, Minnesota. We lived in Meadville, Pennsylvania. We lived in places where people would just look at me and say, "Why are you speaking that? Why are you doing that?"
Because you look white.
I do.
You know.
There's a broad range of all the colors of skin and hair in my family, but I'm definitely on the paler end. And the red hair, people in the U.S. think I'm Irish.
Yes.
I actually don't have a drop of Irish in me.
Yes. So that must be interesting for you to be in spaces where people are not very flattering and kind to immigrants, not knowing that you're an immigrant.
Yeah.
An immigrant that they tend to not like right now.
Yeah. I've done a lot of thinking about that. I've recently really had to think a lot about my relationship to whiteness because of what you said, right? I can walk into a lot of spaces and people think that I'm very much fitting in. I culturally and emotionally observe with an eye of an outsider a lot of the time, but the folks in the room don't know that. And I've seen a lot of things. I have this moment. So I was in this dual language environment in DC. I taught in a dual language school. I used Spanish professionally, almost exclusively for 10 years. And a lot of my social interactions were primarily in Spanish. When my daughter was born in 2002, I was at a park with my best friend, Ceci, and she was Salvadoran. And I'd been hanging out with her in that park for years and years, and her children are older than mine. And I was at the park with my daughter, and I was speaking Spanish with her, as I've always spoken Spanish in that park. And people were coming up to me and saying things like, "Oh my goodness, it's so amazing that you're speaking Spanish to your child. That's great. I really want to tell you how much I congratulate and applaud you for that." And it felt good, but it also felt terrible because Ceci's sitting right next to me, and I've been at the park with Ceci for 10 years. Nobody's ever said to Ceci, "Congratulations for speaking Spanish to your child," right? And I think that's when I really noticed and realized that the color of my skin impacted the way people treated me differently than some people who I very much consider, my sort of like of the same background as me, but they walk through the world in a different way because of the way people treat them. So it's something I think about a lot, to be honest. And I think about a lot in taking on this role at all, because I know that I'm speaking for a really diverse, beautiful community at Common Ground. And I want to make sure I do all of those folks justice.
That's amazing because, the Latino population here in this city is growing exponentially.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a belief that no one wants to pay attention to that in meaningful ways. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about that in a way that is both meaningful for minorities and immigrants.
Yeah. I find it really powerful when I can connect with people in their native language, connect with them culturally. And I feel like again, because of my unique upbringing, I have connections with people from lots of different cultural and ethnic and racial groups. So I'm looking forward to being able to use that in building relationships at Common Ground.
So we've gone through this whole several years process of cultural competency, the CEIO. Yeah. So they've been bringing folks along and understanding bias and racism and checking that and all of that. And so you comment that you seem to be the right sort of choice on the heels of all that work. Yeah. I get that sense.
Yeah, I think the last place I worked, which was TNTP, which is a national education nonprofit, doing work across the country. We were working with an organization called Promise 54, doing some really, really deep diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And I've been in organizations for a long time that are thinking about diversity and equity and inclusion and trying to make change. But this was the first time that I worked in an organization that was willing to acknowledge that white supremacy culture plays a role in our field and the work we do and the way we interact with communities. And it gave voice to something that had been in my heart for a long time. I've been working in education, like I said, for a long time. And in DC, I worked in education in a very multicultural, very a community that was very much embraced both U.S. values and Latino values. And I didn't feel very much tension. But once I came here to Connecticut and I was working in education here, I often felt like my values didn't always exactly align with the prevailing values of what does it mean to be put children first? What does it mean to care about student achievement? And I just often just assumed that and just thought, well, you know, they know better. They're just so much smarter than me, or they're just so much more high achieving than me. And in the last couple of years, I've really been able to say, no, there are different ways to consider this. Like, I think every child should have the choice and the access to college, but I don't think that going to college is the only measure of success for children, for example, right? And I know that that's a belief that I've suppressed for a long time, because that's not how education reform talks about how we measure success, right? And my daughter, she's going into her senior year of high school, and we've had a lot of conversations about what her next steps look like. And she said to me something that just blew me away when she was talking about the choices she'll have to make. And she said, you know, schools just think about getting into college as the end game. That's all they care about. But that's not my end game. My end game is my life. And what that college education.
She is wise.
She is wise. She's like, what that college education and what that debt I may or may not get into. What will my life be like after college? That's the end game. But schools don't care about that. They just care about how many kids they can say that they got into college or what colleges they got into. And I thought that was so wise of her. And I think we're getting wiser as a society.
I hope so.
As we say some of these harder things out loud.
Yes.
So yeah, when I saw the Common Ground job description,
I was just going to ask you, what did you think of that?
I loved it. I noticed, well, I've loved Common Ground for years. My kids have been in community programs at Common Ground since 2010.
That's how people get hooked. Those little programs are like crack.
It is.
Get those kids outside in that dirt and with the chickens and the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And the trails. And they have a good time.
Absolutely. And I'm a single mom, and I came to Connecticut alone with my two kids. They were 4 and 1 when we got here, and they were a little older when we discovered Common Ground. But Common Ground was what we did. It was what we did for vacation days. It's what we did for after school. It's what we did for summer. It's what we did.
Yes.
And so I've been in Common Ground for a long time. And so certainly when I saw Common Ground is seeking an executive director, my heart just leaped. And then when I was really reading through the job description, I was so excited to see that Common Ground is really asking themselves so many of the same questions that I've been asking myself in my work. And they used phrases like, dismantling racist structures that not a lot of people are using yet.
No.
And so I was like, yes, they're doing it. They're doing the work, and it's hard work, I'm going to tell you, but they're doing it. And I can continue to give voice to these ideas that are in my heart, that in so many people's hearts, and can do that work and do it locally. It was just an amazing opportunity.
I'm glad, because, so much of I don't think Common Ground has any, the only issue I think Common Ground has is a perception issue, because time and time again, people think that it's a hipster school for white hipster kids. Honestly, they think it's a coffee Starbucks place for little hipster kids to go. And it's always challenging to me when I hear people sort of say, there aren't any black kids. I was like, how many kids of color at that school?
Yeah, it's about 40% at the school. 40% of this and don't quote me on the numbers, but about 40% of students identify as African American or Black. About 40% identify as Latinx, and about 20%, of other races, including white. So it is such a diverse school.
It is heavily diverse.
Beautifully.
It's
diverse.
probably one of the better diverse schools in the city.
Yeah.
So you'll get that perception issue, because people seem to, and I always invite people to come visit or go to our website and look and see, because I think that's number one. I think the second challenge you might face is that there's other charter schools in this city that don't fare as well or do as well or stand in the same place as we do. And so we get painted sometimes with that brush, or we get teased out from that crayon box because of the way that in which we've carried ourselves and do business and do the work of educating children. And so we've been transparent for a very long time, before transparency was in vogue. It was in vogue. Before everybody was trying on transparency, we was already wearing it. So I'm glad to hear that you were excited about this job.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, going to what you were saying about the perception of Common Ground, one of the things I'm hoping to do in the first few months is certainly learn a lot and get to know a lot of people who know Common Ground. Also trying to understand the folks who don't know Common Ground and what's standing in their way, and what are some of the things that we could do to bring more communities of color over to that side of town and into Common Ground for for community programs, or for picnics, for campouts, for things that folks really might enjoy. So I'm hoping, and maybe through your radio show, I can make some connections to talk to faith leaders or community leaders who are really working with our Black and Latino families in New Haven, and ask those questions, and see if we can't get some more folks to really
you've got a fine board to work with.
I really do. I have some great board members,
if I do say so myself. And they're a very dedicated group of people.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen a board so selfless. Like, they never think about what do I, I've served on a lot of boards across this country.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who's like, what, I'm going to do this because I need to get something out of this, because I need to do this and the other thing. But the people on this particular board at Common Ground, they never ask, what's in this for me? They always just want to serve and further the education, the education.
And the mission of Common Ground, right?
Yes.
It's amazing. I've attended a couple board meetings, and just listening, as you listen to discussion and debate, it always goes back to, how does this decision align to the mission of Common Ground?
Yes.
And that's not always the same as, how does it align to the bottom line? It's not always the same as, how does it get us the most, cred, or the most clout, as my daughter says.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, what is the right thing in alignment with Common Ground? And then let's figure out how we pay for it, and figure out how we make it work.
Because we built a whole new wing,
Yeah.
renovated,
It's amazing.
and did all these wonderful things. And we figured out now that we could, lease out the space for people to use the big space.
There was a wedding there a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really? I was hoping someone would use the space as a wedding.
Yes, they did. There's some great pictures on the facilities website. So we rent out the space for events. People do it for small things like a family picnic you can do,
Mm-hmm.
or large things like a wedding. And we work with all kinds of family groups or organizations to do that. And yeah, I have to say that I obviously one of my roles as executive director is to make sure the Common Ground is strong and sustainable in perpetuity. And I'm learning a lot about the fundraising side of things, and understanding that, we built that wonderful building, and we did it without taking on debt. Common Ground doesn't carry debt, which is amazing, and a real credit to the folks who contributed to that building. But now we have some long-term maintenance and facility needs that we're still raising funds for. So that's one of my goals, is to make sure that we build up our amount of available funds, so that we can be good stewards of that amazing building and those amazing grounds.
So when do you start?
I started last week. I'm in my day.
Oh, are you? You've started?
Day
I
5 plus 4. That 9th day. It's my 9th day of work.
Your well, congratulations. Happy 9th day anniversary.
Thank you.
So what do you think so far?
Oh my gosh, it's been amazing.
Do you have an office?
Well, I have a corner of an office,
Okay.
which is fine. I'm not really a hierarchy person, so it's completely fine. I've spent a lot of the time so far just having one-on-one meetings with as many people as I can. Certainly people I manage, but then just staff across the organization, board members, some parents. I'm just still kind of winding up, so I want to have as many one-on-one conversations as I can, and learn as much about what brings people to Common Ground, what the role Common Ground plays in their story and their family story, and just really starting to understand, because Common Ground, the community has built an amazing strategic plan over the last 2 years.
Yes.
And it's my job to do two things, I think: help prioritize and sort of build structure to support that strategic plan, and then make sure that we can sustain that kind of work financially. And so, I'm just really learning a lot about what it's going to take to do that. And it's been great. I mean, I think we have, like you said, we have so much support from staff, from the community, from board members. It's definitely a challenge in this day and age to run a nonprofit that's doing that kind of work with this kind of mission. Funding does, grants and things like that are, can get reduced, or, sometimes it's harder than others. But I think we're in a solid spot, and I think we can.
I think so, and I think we have great legislative support. Well, our legislators here all love the school, and so we've not had anybody like do us wrong.
I hear that. I think and that would have been probably my observation externally too. And as an example, we Common Ground's never strived to be huge, which I really appreciate. Our goal has always been to get to 225 students in the charter school, and we just got those last 10 seats that we needed to achieve.
Yay!
In the last week. Yeah. And my understanding from Liz Cox, their school director, was that it was the New Haven delegation really pulling for us and
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that when the money became available at the state, the Common Ground was one of the schools that received those seats. So that does tell me that we have a lot of legislative support, and and that's great, because that was one of our big goals for a long time, was getting to scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, effective this year, we will be at scale at the high school.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right. So a lot of schools, particularly these magnet schools in the city of New Haven,
Yeah.
are not equipped to deal with mental health challenges and behavioral issues
Yeah.
of children.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that when they get kids that they can't handle and whatever, they toss them back to the public school system. I've not seen Common Ground do much of that. I mean, surely there have been kids who have had to be suspended from the school. Of course, every school has that. But what I've witnessed is restorative justice and peer-to-peer mediation. I don't see that too many places anymore. Like, I think it was a big thing many years ago, and then it sort of went away.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a challenging thing as we get more and more kids coming in without supports at home, or challenges at home, or challenges in community. What is your thoughts and maybe your commitment to looking at those kinds of issues? Because they're going to show up in the classroom and in the hallways and cafeteria and these places.
They do. And I know that we have, I haven't been there yet on a school day, right? But I know from talking to the staff that Common Ground we have our share of students who have significant trauma in their background. We have a large percentage of students who have identified with IEPs, so have special learning needs, learning differences. So we definitely are a school that needs to be, thoughtful about how we serve that population. I think the way I think about it is, and I know you said we do have peer mediation, and that phrase has maybe gone out of, I remember that from the 90s. And
yes, right. Remember that? Yes.
Yep.
Conflict resolution, that kind of thing.
And I'm glad it's coming back. We have a great program run by Miriam Sheffield in our
I
our
love
school.
Miriam Sheffield.
She is wonderful.
She is a bonus to that school. I think she's under-recognized and under-celebrated. But let me tell you, she's a very good connection to the communities where these kids come from, and they respect her. And I'd like to see her have a little more reign in terms of doing the outreach that she does.
I could
just
see
wanted
that.
to say that.
I appreciate that. She was one of the first people I had a one-on-one meeting with, and been just so impressed with what she shared about the work she's doing, and I'm looking forward to. I told her, I was like,
because there's always somebody who knows kids like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's always somebody who gets kids at all their levels.
Yeah.
And I think Miriam
loves them
and is not moved by their affect or their presentation.
Yeah. They're gonna say some things to you.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think it goes back to that love, right? And Miriam talks about that love. It's top of mind for her.
I've known her for 30 some odd years, and she has always been working with children, always been in that capacity. She's good with them, like in ways that I'm not good with kids. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love my kids, but I can't do that. Get in the trenches with them and like help them process out what they're feeling.
Yeah, she leads with love. That is for sure.
She does.
I when I was there for my interview, I spent a full day, so I had some very small window into the way she interacts with kids, and that's evident immediately. And I guess like that's my thing too, right? I also lead with love. I genuinely love every human being. I know that sounds crazy, but
no.
If I get cut off by somebody on the road, my reaction is typically like, "Oh my goodness, friend, I hope your day gets better. Like I hope whatever it is
I'm
you're
not there
rushing
yet.
off to, it works out for you."
I have a lot to learn from you, Monica.
I learned a lot of it from my daughter too. She's similarly inclined. So I think my commitment is to help every human that I work with, whether it's a child, a school, the programs, and staff, really help them fulfill their full potential. And it's going to take different things for different people. And I know that lack of resources across all of our schools in the state is an issue for serving kids with these needs. And you know, I can't sugarcoat that. That is something, right? Like we definitely need to figure out a way to get, primarily it's human resources. Like when people say what resources, you need more people, right? Like I can have an amazing restorative conversation with kids. That is actually something I'm really good at, but the time it takes is a lot. So you need to make sure you have enough staff who has that skill and that bent to be able to take the time to have those conversations. It's a lot faster to issue a detention than it is to get at the root cause of why someone is doing what they're doing and understand them and build that connection.
Yeah.
And it takes time, and often there's a lot of failure before you get to the place where they actually are making decisions grounded in their best self. So that's where I stand. I've obviously have a lot to learn about what Common Ground does and how they do it, and how I can support with resources, and also partnering with New Haven Public Schools to make sure that we're getting the New Haven Public Schools is or across the state, the district, your site district is responsible for providing the special educator support. And I think that looks a little different in every city. And we're just trying to figure out with New Haven how to make sure that we're getting appropriately compensated for the number of students with special needs from New Haven that we serve, so that we can turn around and serve them as best as we can. So there's a lot of work to do there, but I'm confident we have the right approach.
I think you do. Sounds like you do. So, New Haven is a very political town. Heavily political. I think rivals Chicago in political shenanigans. I love it, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And as we're seeing at the Board of Education, which is quite contentious, which honestly, boards across the country, boards of education across the country are quite contentious. At least I work in media, I see it everywhere.
See it a lot. Yeah.
And so New Haven is just probably right on par with the rest of the country in so many ways. But right now they are, for the last few years, they've been superintendent needy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a very political town. And I always caution people and say that, you have to have some political sophistication to maneuver these waters.
Yeah.
And you cannot be a shrinking violet, and you cannot be one of these people who will say, and I hope you're not, oh, I'm not political. I'm just gonna X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And I think that's a dangerous stance to take in a town that is so politically motivated.
Yeah. So there's a question in there for me, Babz. Because I'm going to be real careful here.
So, how do you feel about politics and players and watching where you are and who you're with and making friends and knowing that Common Ground does have enemies? We don't like to say that.
I don't know who they are.
And we don't want to know who they are.
Yeah.
But I'm out there in these streets, and I know how people can throw other people under the bus for their own gain.
Yeah.
That goes to charter schools and magnet schools and all these schools.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm asking you is, are you prepared or willing or energetic about the political landscape that you are going to step into?
Yeah, I think I am prepared and energetic and excited about the being the external face and voice of Common Ground, and in all the ways that requires me to engage. And there's a lot, right? I think I am aware that it is my job to make sure that Common Ground is represented and presented well in the policy landscape, both at the state and local level. I already have scheduled a meeting with Superintendent Burks. It was one of the first things I did was reach out and say, hey, I'm new, and we work together on so many things. Common Ground partners with New Haven in so many ways. I'd love to meet and just connect and talk about how we work together. And she graciously granted me a meeting.
And she's a fan of all these schools, all these charter schools and magnets. She is a real fan of them.
Yeah.
To people
I don't know her well.
Yes.
I don't know her well, so I just that's good to hear. So I think that my I don't shrink from having tough conversations with people, and I don't shrink away from standing up for what I feel really responsible for. I think one thing I've learned about myself, and I think it's really important to have a lot of emotional intelligence and really know yourself. And I think the last 5 or 6 years for me have been a process of like, who am I and who am I supposed to be? And I think I'm in a place now in my old age where I'm saying I am this, and that's okay. Like,
Yes.
And I have learned that I am heavily driven by feeling by responsibility.
Okay.
I am very not driven by personal acclaim or fame, or I feel really responsible. I remember this conversation with someone I worked with in the reform landscape who said something about, well, you only do things if you have goals. And I was like, I was so offended. That's one of those examples. I was so offended by that. I was like, what? I do a lot of things without goals. I don't have a goal to keep my children alive. I keep them alive every day. I don't need to set goals to do things that are right for humans. And by the way, I do believe in setting goals, and I do set goals professionally and personally, but I actually am really driven by like doing right. Mm-hmm. And what is my responsibility here? And what do I need to do? And so I'm a little bit, it's called a extroverted introvert. Mm-hmm. Like I do need to spend time alone to get energy. But I'm very comfortable and more than willing, to go out and do all the things that it takes to stand up for common ground and be what common ground needs me to be. And so I have a lot of friendships and relationships in New Haven. I've been here a long time, since 2007. And like you said, New Haven's very political. New Haven's also very small. And,
yes.
And your people come around. Your people come back around.
Yes.
Right? They might come on a different loop. They might come at a higher loop, at a lower loop. They keep coming back around. The person who your kids, at my interview for Common Ground, I had a mom. There was a community. One of the interviews was a community interview. Mm-hmm. There were a bunch of community members, and it was sort of my job to figure out who are all these people, and And one of the women there said to me, "Do you remember me?" And I didn't in the moment. And she said, your daughter and my son were at school together at Davis Street, and you had a birthday party for your daughter here at Common Ground, and my son came, and now he goes to Common Ground High School." And that was wonderful to reconnect with her. I knew exactly who she was once she said that. And it was so nice. And then on top of that, I find out that she's the parent rep on the board.
Yay!
Right. And so here's this circle of where these ways in which we've interacted. And I think part of what I try to remember is that the power is very interchangeable.
Yes.
You can never wield your power in a way that diminishes other people's power, because that power just switches back and forth.
Karma knows everybody's address. I say that all the time. So, yeah. Well, then you have the right attitude, because this city is very political, and I know people think if I just keep my head down and do what I have to do, that all of this will just fly over me.
Yeah, I've thought that before, and I learned that it doesn't work, because you got to keep your people.
Yes.
You have to keep your relationships and your conversations with people and your connections, because we all have something in common, right? We all have some commonality, and we have to figure out what is our commonality, not be afraid to name our difference, and sort of think about how do we work together towards the things that we commonly care about, while, acknowledging and sort of living with whatever things make us different. And yeah, so I've tried to keep your head down, and I've learned that it doesn't mm-hmm. work, and it certainly does not fulfill my commitment and my promise to Common Ground in taking this role. So there's a lot of, I'm meeting with people, folks can go on the Common Ground website, commongroundct.org, and there's a link to my bio, but there's also my email address, and they can email me if anybody wants to schedule time to come for a hike with me, come out to Common Ground, have some lunch.
Because I was the parent rep.
Yeah.
So one of the first things I did, I'd volunteered in the cafeteria during the lunch waves. Nice. So I do it once a week, and that's how I got to know the kids, because they'd come in the cafeteria and they got to know me, and I would sit and eat with them and laugh and joke and get to know them.
The kids come back around too, right?
Yes.
Those kids you serve lunch to, they're not working in city government.
I ran into a kid who graduated a few years when I first started, and I saw him, and I did not recognize him because he looked so grown up and different. He's like, he used to eat lunch with us in the cafeteria. I was like, oh my God, this was only like maybe 3 years ago. So yes, they come back around. So
they sure do.
Yes. So, what do you is there some personal or pet or loving or project that you want to see incubated that is not there? I know you've only been there 9 days.
Yeah.
But when you walk the grounds, you're like, they could use a rose garden. Or, do you know what I mean? Or they could use X.
Yeah, I'm not quite there yet. I know that we, one of the things that's on my mind, because it's not in the budget, and I think we need to, invest in it, is sort of think about our animals. We have these wonderful our farm animals. We have chickens and sheep. And I think that we're thinking a little bit about like, how do we expand that in some way, or like how do we make sure that the facilities are good for the animals that we have. So I'm thinking a lot about the animals. Which is
we have
funny.
a wonderful farmer.
We do have a wonderful farmer, and it's funny because that is the one piece. I came into this job, and I know charter schools. I know Common Ground community programs as a participant.
But I don't know farming.
I do not know farming. So I'm just walking the farm and learning and trying to absorb as much as I can. But yeah, I'm curious and interested to see what it would take to make sure that we can sort of shore up the animals, because the animals, it's tricky because there's a farm and they're farm animals. Also, the animals are a huge draw for community programs.
Yeah.
And for kids to come out. And where else in the city of New Haven
nowhere
can kids go and interact with a goat and sheep
real
and
animals?
Chickens,
That's
right?
not a virtual animal.
Correct. And that is part of our responsibility to this community. And so I've been thinking a lot about that in the last week.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it there. I think I'm gonna see how I can create a rose garden. I love roses. And I think the farm needs a rose garden. And I'm willing to sort of put some money behind it and call it a memorial garden for something.
Oh, that's a nice idea.
The city has a beautiful rose garden. Yes. It's,
where?
On the other side of East Rock. Like you can get to it from State Street.
Okay.
And there's a greenhouse. And there's a beautiful rose garden called the Party.
Oh, yes. I actually have been there.
Rose garden. And
Yes.
I discovered my daughter was at Common Ground. She was in the agricultural program.
Okay.
So I had to drop her off at the greenhouse. I had never been over there. And I'm from New Haven.
Yeah, I know. They're just corners of New Haven, Babz. So
and I roll up there and I was like, what the hell? It's a whole full-blown rose garden. And the rose garden keeper, the garden keeper said, oh, it used to be more roses, but over the years they cut them down because there's no one to care for them. They don't have enough manpower to care for them. Yeah. Still equally beautiful.
Right.
But he was like, this whole garden used to be nothing but roses. And they have, they're all named and the year they came.
I know where you're talking about, but now
so
you're
you
inspiring me to go walk through it.
So I was like, Common Ground needs a rose garden.
I don't know. Common Ground's a little wild. We have to find a space that we can,
I know, right? I know they're listening.
And weed enough. You're gonna have to make sure you're paying for somebody who's gonna weed that all the time.
I know. Somebody's listening to me like, I know Babz didn't damn well say we need a rose garden. Yes, I think we do.
As long as you're willing to provide the weeder.
Yes. I will be happy to do that. So, all right, and you got a great fundraising team.
I do.
I mean, no one's better than Kimball,
and Joel, who does writing and their team.
And let me tell you, they stomp these community streets because I run into them and I'm always in the streets. I see them everywhere.
Oh, that's great.
So they're good. Sometimes you can find development people who walk a little shady. Not them.
No.
They are committed to this cause through and through. And it shows. And it's a joy when they invite us to do stuff as a board and everybody steps up and does what they're supposed to do. So you really have a sweet community of people dedicated to the school.
I really do. One of the first things I asked when I came for my first meeting with the management team was, okay, wait, what is there anything big coming up that I own? And I remembered that Common Ground has this big fundraiser in September.
Feast from the
Fields. When is it? And do I own it? And they were like, Feast from the Fields. It's on September 14th, Saturday, September 14th. You don't own it. You just have to be there. I'm like, okay.
Yes.
But yes, I have a fabulous team.
Have you ever come?
I haven't, and that's funny.
You'll love it.
I'm excited. I as a mom, little kids, it just wasn't a thing.
Oh, I know. Oh.
I'm like, there's alcohol and there's no kids, and that's not my thing. But I think this year we're actually working on a plan to provide a partner activity for kids at the same time, so that
families,
people like me who might not want to leave their kids at home for whatever crazy reason, might want to do that. But yeah, I'm excited. I've heard amazing things.
It's a great space for just this kind of outside connection.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful space, and they trick it out, and all the folks from around the restaurants and chefs and bars, they come, and they're happy to come and lend, and it's always good eating.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm good.
Well, I'm excited. I look forward to seeing you there.
Yes, I think I've only missed one in the last 4 years that I've been going. I guess I missed one, and I think because it was on a competing day for some other event somewhere. But yeah, so well, it seems like you have a good vibe for this work.
I'm very personally connected to it,
Mhm.
and I think living and working and sending my kids to school in the same community has always been a goal for me. There have been times when I've been able to live into that goal and times when I haven't, but I'm back into that space, and it is amazing. It is amazing to walk. I run into kids at Common Ground who work at Common Ground, who live on my street. I run into kids, I run into kids at my daughter's school who, it's all just so connected.
So your daughter's a senior at Sound.
My daughter's going into her senior year at Sound.
And you have a son?
I have a son. He's going into 8th grade at St. Bernadette.
Okay.
And yeah, so next 2020 is going to be a big year for me, Babz. I'm going to be high school hunting and college hunting.
Oh,
at the same
Lord.
time.
I've been in that space. I have 4. So I'm not in that space anymore. Everybody's where they're going to be. And I'm like, I'm waiting for September where I don't have to go buy school supplies for the first time in 20 years. And I don't have to go to parent-teacher conferences.
That's a big change. That's exciting.
Oh, it is crazy exciting. But I'm still serving on the board of Common Ground because I believe in the mission. And I love this urban school in the middle of a city.
It is, yeah. It's a school in a park, in a forest, in a city.
Yes, and it's so accessible and it's so inviting.
It is beautiful.
So whatever I can do for you, Monica.
All right. Well,
you call me.
I certainly will. I'm going to reach out to you to schedule a one-on-one meeting.
Yes,
with you.
And let me know because I know everybody in this town just about.
Great.
So you need to, and Dr. Carol Burks is my sorority sister.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful.
As is the mayor, as is Dr. Karen Walton, who heads up the housing authority. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of us around who are connected. So yeah. So you've got friends in this town. You know people.
I do, and I want to meet more. So I hope people come out. Common Ground has open farm day every Saturday from 10 to 2. We have events all the time. Just check out the website. Come out to Common Ground.
And the food share or the garden share or the farm share or whatever it's called, where you pay X amount of dollars and for the season and you get all the vegetables.
We have one coming up for the middle of August to the middle of September. You can pick up at Common Ground or pick up at the Well, which is a wellness center in Westville.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I'm excited. Although I don't know now since I'm a party of one. Yeah. I don't know if I need all the vegetables.
You can choose. You don't have to do it every week. You can just do it a couple of times.
When I had a bunch of kids in the house, I was like, "Oh, this is great! It's in the groceries." But now I'm like, "Oh, I'll go buy my vegetables in the restaurant."
Yeah, it's more cost. I've heard it's more cost effective and time effective to do that when you're on your own.
All right. So before we go, is there any one thing that you want to share with the community about, who you are? What you believe? I mean, you've shared a great deal, but give us one last sort of pearl of wisdom and on how are you going to move about this work?
Put me on the spot. I am a person who deeply seeks and values connection. So, and I am a native speaker of Spanish, native speaker of English, and a willing learner of anything else. So I hope all of what I want is to feel accessible to all of our community members and to really talk to people who love Common Ground and people who don't love Common Ground and people who don't know Common Ground. So I think my big thing is connection. Like, come to Common Ground, connect with the space, connect with me, connect with our team, and you'll find something for everyone. There's something for little kids, high school kids, adults. There at every phase in life, there's something in Common Ground. So don't discount Common Ground. And know that we all, deeply seek connecting with individuals in our community and our community at large.
Yes. Wonderful. So, Monica Maccera Filppu, the
Good
new
job.
executive director of Common Ground High School, the urban farm school in the middle of the city. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Babz.
And I hope you come back again.
I will.
Feel free to come back anytime you want to talk about anything about Common Ground, what we're doing, where we're going,
Love it.
whatever.
We'll do an annual update.
Yes, we'd love that.
I'd
We
love
love
it too.
that. Harry, I'm about to get out of here. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Monica.
Thanks, Babz.